I was beyond pissed when she breezed through the door 3 hours late. "Where the hell have you been?" I had to get Chad ready and take him to school. "Bobby is pissed and I need to get to work." She just shrugged. Bill wanted us to work over a couple of hours. Even paid us in cash so Uncle Sam doesn't get his greedy paws on it. "It'll make up for any time you missed, and Bob already said you were the best one he had. He'll get over it." "Did the phone stop working?" "You could at least have given me a heads up." "Sorry. Didn't think. I need to go to bed now and you need to go to work. I'll make us a good supper to make up for it." She didn't give me a chance to respond before she was headed towards the bedroom. I debated following her, but I knew it would lead to a hell of a fight and I really did need to get to work. I was halfway to the job site when it hit me. The little smirk she had when she said she worked over. Something was wrong and had been going wrong for a while. I put it out of my mind. You need to concentrate to run saws and nail guns. It was 1983 and we were in the midst of a mild recession. I was laid off and my unemployment check was not very big. Then Gail got laid off and that really hurt us. Things were tight, really tight. We were looking, but everyone else was in the same boat and jobs just weren't out there, especially for her. She dropped out of school in the 10th grade and there wasn't a lot offered. Her last job had been minimum wage, but it was all she could get and we needed the money to survive. Then I got lucky. A friend I hadn't seen in years gave me a call. Bobby and I had worked construction together in the late 70s. He always said we made a good team and was sorry to see me go, but I had a good opportunity and couldn't pass it up. He stayed in construction and eventually started his own small business, mostly remodels and property maintenance, though he did build a house on occasion. While everyone else was struggling, he was doing all right, thanks to his maintenance contracts. His biggest client owned most of the rental property in one county, and a good bit in another, and she kept him hopping. "Mac, dude, Jack said you were laid off. I just lost a couple of guys and I thought of you. Wanna help me out part-time?" Damn right I did. He gave me directions to his next project and told me to be there at 7. After we hugged and caught up, he asked me if I remembered how to hang siding. Oh, I could probably fake it. He grinned, gave me 2 helpers, and turned me loose. The other guys weren't really motivated, which I found odd in the tight times we were in, but I stayed on their ass and we were done in 2 days. He had me replace windows in a couple of rental units. By the end of the week I had 35 hours in. He handed out the checks and I was shocked when I looked. It was half what I was owed. He just grinned and told me to meet him at the bar, a little place that got most of its trade from construction workers. I walked in, he bought me a beer and handed me a pool cue. "We're going to play a game of pool. I will lose. When I do, I'll pay you the wager we made." Oddly enough, it's exactly what it would be if I'd paid you for all the hours you worked. He grinned at the look on my face. "Look, you told me you could make $60 and still draw a full unemployment check, right?" I nodded and he continued. "Well, the amount I paid you is just slightly less than what you could have made. That way you still draw a full check and get a little cash they don't know about. We won't always use that amount. Every once in a while it'll be over, and most will be under. I figure I'll pay you a full check about every 6 weeks. You'll lose your check that week, but it will keep the state happy. Of course, you can go all good citizen on me and report it all. Your choice." I thought about that while I drank my beer. I'd been to the unemployment office twice. Both times I had been treated like a number and felt minimalized, and while I know they were overwhelmed, the employees were downright rude, not just to me, but everybody. Fuck them. You need to practice. Your pool game sucks. He just grinned. I was going to share the happy news with Gail, but she had a full head of steam when I got home. "Where the hell have you been? Do I smell beer? We don't have the money for you to be drinking." It took several deep breaths before I could answer. I went by the bar where Bobby hangs out to pick up my money. I had 1 beer and he paid for it. We got a little breathing room on our bills now. I got a little extra. I was going to say cash, but she talked over me, telling me a few hours here and there wasn't going to help any and I needed to get a real job. What did you have for lunch today? I hope it was something solid because I need you to shit me a good job, because I ain't getting one any other way. How about you? You find anything yet? You know nobody wants to hire a high school dropout. Well then, you need to take advantage of the program they offered you and get your GED. That will help, if not now, then in the long run. You keep complaining about being stuck in the house. You could go in the evenings and I could watch Chad. Think about it. She had been fighting that for some reason, so she turned around and stomped off. I went out back and started playing with our son. He was in first grade, and the world was a wonder to him. He told me about what he'd learned that day and I couldn't help but smile. He was a good kid, and even if I had to sacrifice, I made sure he had good clothes and shoes to wear to school, and money available when he needed it for special things like the field trip to the aviary. By the time we were done playing, Gail had a meal put together. We ate a lot of mac and cheese and hot dogs, but we didn't go hungry. I never got around to telling Gail about the cash under the table. I just took it and caught up our power bill. I came home one day a few weeks later and she gave me a big kiss. It surprised me because she had been a little stingy with them lately. Guess what? I got a job. She had fixed an extra nice dinner and was wearing a pair of short shorts and a loosely tied halter top. One of her frisky outfits. I smiled, thinking life would get better. That's great, honey. What is it? Let's eat first, get Chad situated for the night and I'll tell you all about it. That had me frowning a little. What was so mysterious about a job? We had pork chops, something we'd had rarely this year. It was good, the cake was better, and after Chad had his bath and story, she pulled out a couple of my favorite beers. I'd stopped buying them months ago because they were a little pricey. I was starting to feel really uncomfortable. She poured the mugs and settled down across from my recliner. Honey, do you remember Honey? Yeah, I remembered Honey. She was one of her friends while we were dating, and to be honest, a bit of a slut. I'm not a prude. What a woman does with her life is normally not my business. Honey, however, seemed to have no boundaries. She was direct as could be and not above propositioning husbands in front of their wives if she'd had a few. She made 2 runs at me and Gail would think it funny. She tried again while Gail wasn't around. I acted like I was interested, let her steer us into a quiet place. She bent up to kiss me only to find my hand locked around her neck and slammed against the wall. Listen close, bitch. You come on to me one more time and I'll fuck your world up. You might not look so hot with a broken nose and that could definitely happen. I'd act all remorseful and swear it was an accident, but every time after that if you thought about hitting on a man in a relationship, you'll remember your crooked nose and think twice. We clear here? She was sobbing hard and shaking her head yes. That was the last time I saw her or heard anything about her until now. My feeling of unease was growing in great leaps. As far as I could remember, she was directly involved in 7 divorce proceedings, mostly as the other woman. I just nodded. Well, I ran into her at the store the other day and when we caught up and she found out I wasn't working, she offered me a job. What kind of job? Does it involve getting horizontal? Gail flamed red. No, you dick, it doesn't. For your information, she's married now and works for her cousin. He owns a motel in Charlotte and she runs the night shift, 9 until 6. He always has his clerks on the night shift work in pairs, and the woman she works with has quit. Why did she quit? How would I know? The fact is she quit and it pays pretty well. $10 an hour. Well, that seemed like real money to someone used to making $6.65 an hour. I tried to be diplomatic. That's a pretty good wage, Gail. But to be honest, it doesn't make me comfortable. Is the motel in a good part of town? Is it a good place to spend the night or is it a dump? You'll be working in the middle of the night, when all the crazies and druggies are out. I'd hate for you to get hurt or killed for $10 an hour. And to be honest, I'm not too crazy about you working with Honey. She's changed. A lot. She's got a husband and a 2-year-old girl. Honey is not the same woman we both remembered. Plus, the cops patrol through there pretty often and we're pretty safe. I promise you, the first time I get a bad vibe and I'll quit. We talked some more about Chad and how it would affect him. I get off at 6. I can be home by 6:45, have your breakfast made, take him to school, then come home and sleep. That way I can spend the evening with my 2 favorite men before they go to bed and I have to go to work. We talked ourselves out and agreed to take it up later. Gail talked me into having Honey and her family over for dinner. I have to admit she didn't look anything like I remembered. Her hair was up, she had on a conservati V top and slacks, and she was pleasant. Her husband seemed to be a good guy. I wondered if he knew about her past. Her little girl was adorable and Chad was enamored of her right off the bat. He ended up in the backyard while I grilled, letting her wander around while he was one step behind her. Gail and Honey laughed. If he's that infatuated when they grow up, we could be in-laws. It was a nice evening. The little girl went down for a nap after her meal, and Chad fell asleep on the floor. Her husband Jeff went to the bathroom and Gail went into the kitchen for more beer. I seized the opportunity. Honey, do you remember the little discussion we had right before Gail and I got married? Her eye went wide and she self-consciously rubbed her neck. That was a long time ago. I've changed. I have to admit I like the new Honey a lot better than the old one, but I want you to remember something. If anything happens to Gail, anything bad, and I think you were involved somehow, I'll make good on my promise. You remember that. Jeff came back and Gail came out with the beers. They stayed about another hour before they left. Their taillights weren't out of sight before she started asking questions. Did you see how much she's changed? Hard to believe. I'd never thought she would be married with a child. I always thought if she rolled up pregnant back then that half the men in the county would be sweating. She punched my ribs. That was a mean thing to say. Maybe, but it would still have been pretty accurate. Come on, let's clean up and get to bed. I thought about everything the next morning while I mowed grass. Honey, for all her past faults, was an attractive woman. A 5'3" blonde-haired blue-eyed pixie with a great body. I used to smile when I saw her and Gail together. Gail was 5'9", pretty tall for a woman, with jet black hair. She was willowy shaped, except when it came to her chest. Full-breasted, with no sag and perky nipples. Men had swarmed to them like flies to honey, but Gail shot most of them down. She told me she was no virgin early on, but neither was I, and none of it mattered to me once we said our vows. In the end, I didn't fight her when she got the job. Still made her make a bunch of promises, and still worried about her. I was up when she came home from her first day. How was it? Boring as hell. Not much goes on late at night at a motel. Everybody is asleep except for a few partiers who stagger in after the bars close, but they usually don't make a lot of noise. It's easy money, honey. She came home with her first check happy as could be. We decided we'd spend her first month's income getting ahead on our bills, then start saving most of it for when we went house hunting. I was getting more and more work with Bobby, and I found I enjoyed it more than I remembered. Bobby was begging for me to go full-time if I hadn't found anything by the time my unemployment benefits ran out. We were still gaming the system, part of the pay being reported, the rest under the table. I'd started putting half of the under-the-table money in his savings account, planning to use it to take Gail and Chad on a vacation. It would be our first in 4 years and Chad had never seen the ocean, so I wanted to take him to the beach. Things went along pretty good for about 4 months. Gail came in bubbling one day and told me the third shift made it quit and she and Honey were going to make some extra money cleaning the empty rooms. One would work the desk while the other cleaned and they would alternate days. Does that mean you'd be at the desk alone? Honey, nobody, and I mean nobody, comes to the desk after midnight. Plus, we got these walkie-talkie thingies that we carry, so if somebody comes to the front desk we don't like, we call each other. We'll be fine. The extra money did come in handy. Then one day Gail came in looking beat up. I asked and she shrugged. Hard night. Had a bunch of convention guys in and they left the rooms a mess. I cleaned toilets and carpets all night. Would you mind fixing Chad's breakfast today? I knew what a bad day was like, so I helped Chad get ready for school while she took a shower and went to bed. She was subdued for a few days before she seemed to perk up. As the weeks went by, she seemed to change. It was little things at first. She stopped talking about her job except to say it was the same old, same old. She was also dressing better. I complimented her and it seemed to make her happy. I felt kind of guilty spending the money, but I needed the clothes. I took part of the extra money I'm making and updated. There it was again, the little smirk I'd been seeing lately, like she knew a joke that I didn't. It was starting to bother me. Then the changes started in the bedroom. Normally we made love 3 times a week if our schedules permitted. Mostly it was on the weekends, but she had developed a pattern of jumping me just after Chad went to bed 2 or 3 times a week, especially Thursdays. She was a bit more aggressive than in the past, especially orally, both giving and receiving. I finally asked her about the change. She seemed startled and took a minute to reply. I've never talked about this with you, but you see a lot of things working in a motel. There are a few couples who come in every 2 weeks or so, who kind of like to leave doors open or get risky in the pool. Plus, they tend not to be with the same man every week. I think they're swingers. Some of the things me and Honey see are pretty wild. It's like watching live porn and I can't help getting fired up. That's why I'm extra horned up sometimes. I know we've never talked about it, but have you ever thought about us having anal sex? 2 of the couples do it regularly and both seem to really enjoy it. I had to process a minute. Isn't that dangerous to the motel? What about cops, irate spouses, that sort of thing? And I've never really thought about anal. Is it something you want to try? It's the middle of the night and no one is about. If we see a regular guest, Honey alerts them and they take it inside and close doors. They tip really well, Honey, usually a 20 in every room. They're responsible for most of my new wardrobe. And yes, I think I'd like to try it, just once, to see what it's about. I was starting to dislike the idea of her continuing to work at the motel. We did try anal that weekend while Chad was spending the night at his grandparents'. It was good. Gail seemed really into it, almost howling by the finish. She seemed not to have any pain, but we had prepared her with lube and a couple of vibrators. Then the insolence started, the minimizing of our family time. I asked her what was wrong. I'm just tired of struggling. It seems every dime we get ahead, something comes along to take it. Wouldn't it be nice to do what we like, when we want, like before we had bills and a kid? Everybody has fantasies. Yeah, I'd love it. But the reality is we do have bills and a child. Wanna chunk everything, drop Chad off somewhere and run away? I didn't think so. It's getting better, Honey. Our bills are caught up and we're even saving a little. I'm thinking about going full-time with Bobby. He'll give me a raise and more hours if I do. It hurt me when she scoffed at the idea. Think that'll make a difference? You need a job that has insurance. We're all healthy right now, but one accident will bankrupt us for years. I sighed. It is what it is, Gail. Unless we can find new careers that pay a lot better, we have to work with what we have. There it was again, that little smirk. It all came apart one day when I needed a pen. Chad was pretty bad to carry everything that you could write with into his room. He was a budding artist and his work covered every inch of our refrigerator. He was asleep, and I didn't want to wake him, so I decided to grab one out of Gail's purse. I didn't go into her purse because she kept it filled with so much junk that it irritated me. I picked it and grinned at the weight. Well, the pens were usually right on top. I opened and just sat there for a minute. It was full of money. A lot of money. I pulled it out and counted it. $2,300, a chunk of change for the time. I heard Gail waking up, so I shoved the money back in and put her purse back on the floor beside the couch. I sat and thought as she chattered. There was no way that money was legitimate. My first thought was she was into drugs. I decided not to say anything. I'd be following her to work Friday night. Han, Chad is going to be with your folks Friday. Bobby and I are going fishing. He's found a spot on the lake and swears every catfish he's pulled out of there is over 10 pounds. She smiled. Go ahead. Have a good time, and I'm looking forward to some salt and pepper catfish for dinner Sunday. Catch a big one for me. She wanted to play and seemed disappointed when I begged off. I pulled something today at work. I think I need an ice pack or a heating pad for my back. Gail was instantly concerned, getting me some pain pills, an ice pack, and had the heating pad plugged in beside my recliner. She kissed me when he left. Rest, honey. Don't go to work tomorrow. We can afford for you to take a day off. I'll check on you when I get home. She called me later, something she rarely did, to check on me. I told her I felt much better and wasn't doing anything tomorrow but painting, so I should be fine at work. She fussed a little, telling me to take the day off, told me she loved me, and hung up. I was seriously ineffective at work the next day. Bobby finally told us to knock off for lunch. Come on, Mac. I'm buy-in. We sat down at the little greasy spoon he favored, and after we ordered he told me to spill whatever was bothering me or he was going to send me home. I really needed to talk to somebody, so I told him about the money and her general attitude. What are you gonna do, ABO? You tea it? I'm going to the motel tomorrow night and see what's happening. And if you see something you don't like? Then I figure I'll go to somebody's ass. Bobby sighed. Remember Jefferson George? Of course I did. He was the rich kid in school, his father had more money than half the town combined. I'd caught him with a 14-year-old he'd given some liquor to, and he was trying to get her in his car. She was pretty drunk, but she was fighting him as best she could. He finally got tired of it and slapped the hell out of her. Get in the car, bitch, and shut the fuck up. He didn't know anyone else was around, so I tapped him on the shoulder. He looked around, told me to fuck off, and started to get in his car. The girl was my cousin. I beat the hell out of him. Broke teeth, 2 black eyes, and a sprained left arm. I was fixin' to stomp him in the balls when they pulled me off him. His dad pretty much owned the police department, and someone had called 911. I've often thought I was luckier than I was smart, and this was never truer, because a state trooper had a car pulled over within sight and had just finished the ticket when the call came in. He took one look at the girl in Jefferson and called for an ambulance. Then he got statements from all the witnesses, and they were afraid to lie to him because he wasn't local. The local cops showed up and wanted to take over, but the trooper stopped them. Sorry, boys. I've already started the paperwork, so it's mine. I'll drop him off at the station for questioning when I finish up, so you can do your own investigation. They didn't like it much, but they had no choice. He asked around, found out who my friends were, and told Bobby to find a phone and call my folks. Tell them to get down to the station as quick as possible. They might want to call a lawyer. He took his time, but finally had to put me in his car. There was no love lost between the state and the locals. I found out later they were investigating the police department for corruption and abuse of power. He talked to me as he drove. Listen, kid, there are things going on here you don't know about. I'm going to drop you at the station. Do not say anything to anybody. We clear here? Good. Your parents will hopefully be there before we are, but just in case, refuse to be interviewed until they get there. We got there before my parents, so the trooper took his own sweet time releasing me to the locals. He pulled an Instamatic camera out and took some pictures. The cop waiting to book me asked him why. Because there are no bruises or contusions on the boy. If any show up later, I'll be forced to investigate. You understand what I'm saying? The cop didn't like it, but there was nothing he could say. My parents and Uncle Pete came through the door. The trooper asked for ID and released me to them. I'm not filing charges pending the investigation. My advice is keep the kid close to home for a few days. We were about to go out the door when 2 cops stopped us. Not so fast. We're taking him into custody. You can bail him out Monday. What's he charged with? The state has started an investigation and released him to his parents. I believe state supersedes city, if I remember my law right. Since I'm a lawyer, I'm pretty confident that that's the case. They changed tactic. He's not under arrest. We just want to question him. For 2 days? Not gonna happen. I'll have him down for an interview Monday morning. I will be present when you question him. All questions will go through me. Clear? I have orders to. Then get me the man who issued the orders. If you can't in a reasonable time, we're going home. There was a lot of whispers and phone calls, but an hour later we were home. Dad wrote a check and handed it to his brother-in-law. Here. A retainer. He laughed and tore it up. Write me one for $5. I'm tired of losing cases because of crooked cops. Maybe this case will change things. When the smoke cleared, no one was charged. Mr. Moneybags gave up when he read the report of the alcohol level in his son, the girl, and what the witnesses said. Jefferson wasn't really well liked, and a lot of witnesses said he threw the first punch. He got his revenge. They had to expel both of us, and he sent his son to a boarding school to finish his senior year. I didn't get to walk across the stage and had to go to summer school to get my diploma. Bobby brought me back to the present and I nodded. Then you remember what it cost you to fuck him up. I know you. There isn't a lot of planning where you're concerned. You just charge in, damn the torpedoes. You need to stop and think when you find out what's going on. Don't do anything stupid. Remember Chad? You have to make sure nothing happens to him. He was right, damn it. You're right, but I have to do something. We are going to go to this motel tomorrow and check it out. If we see anything hinky, we will think it through before we react. Tell me you understand. It seemed the best plan possible, so I agreed. Friday night at 11 found us parked in an empty lot across from the motel. It was the first time I'd seen it. It wasn't a dump, but it wasn't top tier either. I was surprised at how full the lot was. We had binoculars, and I could see Honey behind the counter, but there was no sign of Gail. At 11:30, a woman who looked a lot like Gail walked out of the motel and across the parking lot to a strip club. I was halfway out of the car when Bobby pulled me back in. You sit still. She hasn't seen me more than a few times, so I'm gonna put this ball cap on and go see what's going on. Do not get out of the car. 90 minutes later he was back, looking a little pale and damned uncomfortable. He just sat there for a minute before he spoke. She's stripping, Mac. Her stage name is Desire, and she's pretty good at it. I saw her do a routine, then she circulated and took 3 guys into the back for lap dances. The bouncer told me that's all they'd allow inside, but the women had an agreement with the motel and as long as they took their trade-off company property, they didn't say anything. I asked for Desire and he laughed. She's booked full tonight and doesn't work weekends. I think she has a kid she sees then. She works Tuesday and Thursdays next week, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday the next. She and a girl named Honey rotate. I think she works at the motel the night she doesn't work here. Want me to set you up? I gave him a 50. I would like a Wednesday, but I don't know if I can make it. If I'm not here by midnight, I won't be coming. She's pretty expensive, man. $25 for an interview, $50 for full service, and $1 for any extra services you may want. I think he talked like that because he thought I might be a cop. I gave him another 50. Here. If I'm not here on time, it's free money for her. While we were talking, Gail came out of the club with a man on her arm and went straight to the motel, waving at Honey when she went by. By 3, she'd made 2 more trips. I was numb when Bobby put his truck in drive. We've seen enough. You need to calm down and think about what you want to do. Let's go fishin'. What? We're supposed to be fishin', remember. Besides, what better place to make plans than at a deserted lake in the middle of the night? So we fished. Even caught a few. Mostly, though, we talked. What you gonna do? Divorce her. I don't see any other way out. I need to keep Chad. I do not want him exposed to what she's doing. All right, we need to gather evidence and catch her in the act, so to speak. Any ideas? I need to tell you, I think the local cops are in on it. We saw them cruise through the parking lot 3 times, remember? They have to know what's going on. That's when I thought about the trooper. He was instrumental in taking down the local cops and it got him a promotion to the SBI. He mostly worked corruption cases now. I'd see him in the papers every now and then. I think I know someone who might help. I managed to make it through the weekend. Even had sex with her once, acting like I was in pain the whole time. She settled on snuggling and paid a little more attention to Chad than usual. He ate it up. He'd really been missing his mother lately. That made what I was going to do even harder. I called first thing Monday, explaining who I was and telling them I had information I thought he needed to have. They put me through after about 20 minutes. He remembered me and we talked about the past for a few minutes before he asked what he could do for me. I told him the whole story, including the fact that one of the strippers/hookers was my wife, and that we thought the local cops were involved. He listened and I could tell he was making notes. Can you meet me and my partner there tonight? I had to drop Chad off with my folks, telling them it was an emergency. We met at a Waffle House and talked. He introduced his partner, an attractive redhead, and suggested we ride together in their undercover car. I figured it would be a boxy 4-door that screamed undercover cop, but it was really nice 3-year-old T-Bird. They grinned when they saw my face. We confiscated it in a drug bust a couple of years back. That's how we get most of our undercover cars. We switch every month. We get the Firebird next. Lieutenant Brown, the man I knew, laughed. Yeah, and when we do, I'm driving. Detective Walters has a lead foot. They shared good-natured banter while we got into position. I identified Gail and Honey. They watched Honey go into the club. First Brown got out. I'm going in, see how much I can learn. Then Tabby will be up. We talked as we waited. Won't it be awkward going into a place like that? She laughed. I stripped for 3 years while I worked my way through college. That's all I did, though. I never even gave lap dances. I saw too many relationships dissolve while I worked to ever be tempted. I'll go in, try to get an interview with the manager, tell him I'll be moving to the area in a few weeks and I'm trying to line up a job. I got a few shots of me left over from my stripping days to satisfy any questions he might have. She just finished telling me about her lawyer husband and her 2 daughters. She smiled when she saw my face. My husband knows. We met at the club. He worked his way through law school as a bartender and bouncer. He knows I never went with any guys and I know he never touched any of the working girls, even though they saw him as a challenge and tried pretty hard. I finally had to claim him to get them to back off. We decided to go on a few dates to prove it and never looked back. 7 years now, and we're still as happy as the day we married. She looked at me sadly. Don't judge your wife just yet. She may have been forced into this. I've seen it happen. If that's the case, I urge you to get counseling and try to save your marriage. If she's doing it of her own free will, well, how it ends is up to you. Brown came back and he wasn't smiling. I got the same information your buddy got. There's about half a dozen girls in on it. This is shaping up to be a pretty big prostitution ring. There's a picture of your wife up along with all the other strippers on the wall. If there's a red X with a circle around it at the bottom, it means she's available for extra services. Tabby, you're up. She was gone for about 30 minutes. She did not look happy when she got back in the car. The place is just above a brothel. I got to see the manager, showed him my old photos and told him I was relocating and would be available in 5 weeks. The sleazebag admitted that a lot of his girls hooked, but he turned a blind eye to it. He also tried to get me to give him head as a gesture of good faith. I just grinned and told him we'd take that up as soon as I got a job. I need a shower pretty bad right now. They took me back to the diner. This is where your involvement ends. I'm really sorry, man. It pretty plain you loved her. So what's gonna happen now? We'll get a small team on this. It'll take about a month or so before we move. Watch for it in the paper. The strip club, the local cops in on it, and the motel will all go down. We'll shut the strip club down for solicitation, the motel for operating a brothel, and the cops will lose their jobs and face criminal charges. I need to tell you, all the women involved will be charged with multiple counts of prostitution and it will be a matter of public record. The only silver lining is you've got a good reputation and a steady job, and judges don't like to award custody of children to prostitutes if there's a viable alternative. You are going for divorce, right? I have to. I couldn't forgive her and I can't expose a 6-year-old to that lifestyle. Tabby reached out and touched my hand. We usually try not to get involved with divorce cases to keep our face out of the news, but if you need us, we're sure your lawyer can arrange an in-chambers deposition. It hit me. Shit. There's no way I can act normal for that amount of time. I'm just not that good at it. What can I do? Brown grinned at me. This is going to be a pretty big case. We won't want it coming apart too early. You said you worked construction? Let me see what we can do. Try to hang on for a few days and we'll get back to you. True to his word, 2 days later we were offered a short-term contract to help build a new jail halfway across the state. Aside from what was going on, they were offering damn good money and it would have been hard to pass up even under normal circumstances. Bobby knew what was going on. He knew why we got the contract, but he didn't care. I told Gail that night. Good news. You know how we're trying to figure out how to make more money? Bobby got an offer of work from an old friend. His project is running behind and he's facing penalties if he doesn't finish in time. We'll be making half again what we're making now. It'll be 7 days a week for about a month, but with the overtime, it would be about what I'd make in 4. I have to do this, honey. It may lead to more opportunities down the road. Surprisingly, she was not happy and tried to talk me out of it. I threw up every argument she'd ever given me about improving our lot and it seemed to stall her justifications for me staying home. It's only for a month, honey. I'd hate to go that long without loving on you, but think of the reunion sex when I get home. A whole month without. We'll be sore as hell the first few days. Gail went quiet, knowing she wouldn't be going without. I made arrangements with her parents and mine to help her out, gave her and Chad a big kiss, and left. I wasn't lying about the overtime. They were so far behind they were happy to let us work 7 days a week. It was a new minimum security prison and the cells were built to look more like dormitories. The only difference was there was no kitchen and the cells were 8 by 8 and each had a sink and toilet. It was a plumbing nightmare. Our responsibility was siding and roofing. They were the biggest buildings I'd ever sided, and we managed to get 2 sided and roofed a week. There was only 6 left to do when we got there, so by the last week we were looking for something to do. Bobby ran a sheetrock crew while I helped the plumbers. It was irritating crawling around under those buildings, but the plumbing contractor paid me extra for running a crew. 4.5 weeks later, all that needed to be done was to run the fence around the property. It didn't look like a prison without the fence, and the general contractor told me that it was deliberate to make the inmates less likely to try to escape. I asked him if it worked. Reports indicate that escape attempts in places built like this are down 44%. There are still enough dumbasses that they have to put up the fence and have guards, but the state is happy with the results. I called home from a payphone twice a week and we usually talked for about 30 minutes. Chad would update me on everything that happened to him since we'd talked last, and asked when I was coming home. Gail talked about general things and asked when I was coming home. I told her the next week was my last and I'd be home the following Tuesday. Every once in a while, I'd ask a question about her job and she'd brush it off. The last time we talked she surprised me. I'm thinking about quitting, honey. I'm tired of not sleeping beside you every night. Plus, I can feel us drifting apart. I don't want that, honey. I still love you. Well, that was new. I called Brown. I'm glad you called. I was just about to call you. Watch the news Friday night. It'll happen then. I stayed silent for a minute and he keyed on it. Having second thoughts? Yeah. I loved her for a long time, you know? This is going to be hard on our child. It is. But if want to guarantee custody, this is the only way to do it. We don't charge her, she doesn't have a record. If she finds a sympathetic judge, you're a part-time father. You really don't want her to have custody. I'll brief you on it later, but things have changed. Friday night I called, just to hear her voice one last time. I've been thinking. Maybe you ought to stay home tonight. I'll come home, we can grab Chad, and be at the beach in 3 hours. Think how happy he'd be. Think how happy we'd be. There was a moment of silence before she spoke. It's too late to get someone to cover and I don't want Honey to be there by herself. I'll come home Saturday and take a nap while you get everything ready. We can leave by 1, be checked in and on the beach by 5. Let's try to spend a week, Honey. It'll do us good. I sighed. I'd tried. All right. See you tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. We have a lot of loving to catch up on. Gotta go. I love you. I loved you, too. I wondered if she'd caught what I said. Bobby and I watched the evening news at 11 that night. We were in another market, but it came up in the statewide section. The SBI Prostitution Task Force carried out a major raid tonight at the Dreamland Motel in Charlotte, North Carolina, breaking up a major prostitution ring. 14 people were arrested, including the owner of the motel and the 2 night managers. The owner for providing a place for the prostitution to take place, the managers, it seemed, were part of the prostitution ring. The manager of the Fantastic Ladies Erotic Entertainment Lounge, located beside the motel, was also arrested in the sting, though his charges have not been made public. There is also an unsubstantiated rumor he was involved in human trafficking. While the reporter was talking, you could see people being led out of the motel towards a police van. Honey was the first, wearing what looked like just a t-shirt. Gail was right behind her, dressed in an extremely short skirt and a top that left most of her breasts exposed. I think Brown might have had something to do with it, because the camera zoomed in on Gail, showing a close-up of her face. She was crying. It was evident neither had on panties when they were loaded into the van. Bobby looked at me. Sorry, dude. I know how much you loved her. You know you had to do it this way, for Chad. You know, when everybody tells you that you did the right thing and you know you did the right thing, why does it feel like shit to do it? Because, usually, the right thing always ends up being the hardest thing to do. You had no idea when you married Gail or when she went to work at the motel this was going to happen. Bad shit happens to good people. It's how they deal with it that shows their character. Now, I'm going to leave you alone. Cry, scream, break shit if you want to. Just try to get enough out that you can function when it's time to go home to your child. I know I don't have to say it, but I'm there. For you, brother. After he left, I tried to cry. I thought about going to the package store and getting a bottle. I thought about beating the walls out of the motel room. In the end, I didn't do any of those things. I just sat there, numb, for the rest of the night. Bobby found me and didn't say a word, starting the shower and practically shoving me inside. The hot water hit me and I cried, bitter tears of betrayal and loss. I was a lot better when I got out. Let's go. You're driving. I slept most of the way home. Their bail was set at $2,000 each. She had the money in her secret account but couldn't access it and there was no way in hell I was going to pay it. The longer she stayed in jail the more certain of me getting custody of Chad. The kid didn't understand. I tried to explain it as best I could. Son, your mother got involved with some bad people and did some bad things. She won't be living with us right now, so we're on our own. She still loves you, but she just can't be with us right now. So she's coming home later? I don't know, son. We'll have to see. I was doing my best, trying to ease him into the realization Mommy wouldn't be living with us anymore. I was just glad it was the beginning of summer. I know how cruel kids can be, and I was hoping by the time school started again the whole thing would be out of everyone's mind. Both sets of grandparents pitched in to watch Chad while I worked. We usually ended up eating dinner with whichever set had him. It was really awkward at first with her parents. They apologized for Gail, but I shut them down. She made her choices and it forced me to make mine. I need you to understand your daughter and I have no future together. None. That being said, it was her choices and not yours. Chad loves you and I would never stand between you and your grandchild. If it makes any difference, I've always thought a lot of you. If you feel uncomfortable around me or if it gets to be too much to keep Chad, let me know. Her dad just looked sad, but her mom wrapped me in a hug and cried her eyes out. When she broke, she told me she'd expect Chad in the morning and me in the afternoon. Meatloaf tomorrow. I hugged her again and shook his hand, wondering as I walked away how they were handling the stigma of what Gail had done. It was a small town, after all. I just hoped there wasn't a lot of small people in it. It took her 10 days to get out of jail. By then I had all her things boxed and sitting in her parents' garage. I sent her a letter with the divorce papers, telling her to keep her distance from me and that sometime in the future, after the divorce, I'd like to ask her why. She went straight to her parents' house when she was finally free. I don't know what kind of reception she expected, but they made it clear she had 2 weeks and then she needed to be out. The rumor mill told me she and Honey rented an apartment in Charlotte. I thought that was a good thing, that they deserved each other. Lieutenant Brown called me a week later. I thought you'd like to have an update and find out when all this goes to trial. After they bonded out, we made it clear to them if they left the state we'd be after them. Both she and her partner share an apartment. They don't work at the motel or the club because they've been seized by the city, but they've found work at other clubs. I don't know if it's just stripping or whether there are extra services, but I don't think so. They get caught for prostitution again before they go to trial and it could go very badly for them. I doubt seriously they get any jail time. If they do, it will probably be 3 to 6 months. The owner of the motel and the manager of the club face more serious charges. I doubt either one ever get their property back. The DA is up for election this year, so he'll be as hard on them as he can. I figure a couple of years for both. They could get more, but they cut a deal and have given up 3 different sex traffickers and 2 major drug dealers. We're trying to keep that hushed up because if word got out they wouldn't last a week in jail. Her arrest and probable conviction will be a matter of public record, and that should help you keep custody of your child. I'm really sorry for the way your life turned out, but I'm sure the girls we rescue from the traffickers will be grateful. We've tracked them through 4 states and all the way into Mexico. Watch the news. What you see is a direct result of you coming to us. We can't thank you enough. There were several stories over the next few months about traffickers, but I was too concerned about my situation to pay much attention. She got a lawyer and tried to block the divorce, and no one, including her lawyer, could understand why. I'd used Uncle Pete and he said it was an open and shut case. Her lawyer was pretty good and we did have some serious discussions. Oddly enough, one was about money. She wanted half and full unsupervised visitation if she didn't get custody. We met in her lawyer's office. It was the first time I'd seen her in 4 months. She looked like a totally different person. Her hair, her eyes, her clothes, were all a far cry from what she wore when we were married. I guess she was a pretty good businesswoman. Always advertising the product. Pete started it off. I think we're being more than fair here. He wants 70% of the assets, as little as they are, and he waives rights to child support. How could that not be fair? Her lawyer was a slick guy and I knew she had to be paying him a fortune. That's just not acceptable. She wants 50% in full custody, with a fair amount of child support. Pete countered. 50-50, he receives custodial rights to the child with supervised visitation at first. If Mrs. Stoneman proves herself trustworthy, the supervision may be dropped. Plus, she will be required to pay child support. The lawyer started to speak when Pete laid out a bank statement. 50-50 include this money, an account that was not revealed in discovery. There was $14,000 in it on the day our clients parted ways, and no judge in the world would object. Whoever we get is going to take a dim view of it being accidentally left out of the financial documents. Gail's face went pale. She hadn't known her secret account had been discovered. I'd gone into her purse again just before the arrests and found the bank book. I took it out and photographed it, making sure I got the account and routing numbers. I don't think her lawyer knew about it, either, judging by the look on his face. The lawyer asked for another meeting at a later date. For the first time I spoke. No. Take it or leave it, Gail. If you fight, there will be a lot of dirty secrets you don't think I know that will come out. By the time I'm done, any judge in their right mind would give me a restraining order keeping you away from your son. If you love him, sign the papers. If money is worth more to you, I'll send you pictures of his high school graduation. It'll be the next time you see him. I walked out, surprising Uncle Jake. He talked for a few minutes before he came out. You need to tell me when you're gonna do things like that. She gonna sign? Her lawyer is working on her. He knows she has little option but to sign. Now tell me about her dirty secrets. Laughing, I told him I made it up on the spot. He grinned. Well, she must have some secret she doesn't want anyone to know, judging by her reaction. I think she'll sign. Everyone, especially old friends of hers, thought I was being a hard ass. Fuck them. Let them fight for the well-being of their child and see how forgiving they were. I did offer an olive branch to Gail, letting her visit Chad for 3 hours under the supervision of her parents. The divorce came through before the criminal trial, but I made sure I was in the courtroom when it started. Gail and Honey told a sad tale of being given cocaine by Bill, and then agreeing to strip in their weakened state. Seems he used the motel for a lot of not-so-strictly legal things. The swingers got caught up in the scandal, and come to find out, while most were married, it wasn't to each other. 3 divorces came from the exposure. Honey's husband divorced her as well, using Uncle Jake to get custody of their little girl. It also came out in court he was having regular sex with both as part of his fee for letting them use the hotel. I wondered how close a cousin he was to Honey. They also had to get their Johns to pay $15 for the room, and they usually serviced 4 customers a night, so he was making twice what a room cost a night. The judge expressed sympathy about them being seduced into the lifestyle, but noted both came back clean on a drug panel. Seems that after they got started, they didn't need the drugs anymore. In the end, he gave them 3 months in the county jail. Both were crying when they were led away. I ended up getting $2,000 in cash and $50 a week in child support. Gail got to see Chad twice a week under supervision of child services, but after 2 months she was allowed unsupervised access if she visited at her parents' house. Chad gradually drew away from her, and one day she sent a note via her parents. She'd taken a job with a national chain and would be traveling up and down the East Coast performing for 6 weeks at a club before moving on to the next. She said it was so the customers could see fresh faces. Gail gave up her visitation rights but pleaded with me to let her see him when she was near. The next year she did a swing out west and ended up settling in Las Vegas. Well, at least what she had been doing was legal there. Chad still got an expensive present on his birthday and Christmas, along with letters when he got old enough. He adjusted to a single-parent household pretty well, especially since he had 2 sets of grandparents who were constantly around. I remarried when he was 12, to a woman about 5 years younger than I was. She came with a little girl of 7, so we sold both our houses and bought a bigger one to fit all of us. Chad was a little reserved at first, but Melody followed him around like he was a god, and he warmed up to her. He surprised Katie, my new wife, by calling her mom about a year later, and she tried to hide the tears, but we all saw them. I took some of the money I'd made and gotten off the alienation of affection suits I'd filed against Bill and the club manager, and bought a half share in Bobby's business. B&M Construction grew into a mid-sized business, and we had a good reputation. We did a lot of work for the state through the contractor we'd worked with in the month I was hiding from Gail. When Chad was 24, he came to me with something serious to talk about. I've met someone, Dad. I think she could be the one, and I want to bring her by to meet you and Mom. She wants to bring her parents along if you don't mind. I think he's afraid to face you alone. I thought it odd, but we agreed to have them over for steaks on the grill. Melody was 17 by then, and a handful. Our house always had several girls and more than a few boys hanging around. She was off to college in a year. The nest was definitely going to be empty without her. We made it clear she was to banish her friends that night and be on her best behavior. Chad showed up about an hour before we scheduled, with his girl in tow. I could see the attraction. She was a cute little thing, just barely over 5 feet tall, with a dimpled face and long blonde hair. Built pretty good too. Katie caught me looking and grinned. I think she approved of her the moment she volunteered to help with the side dishes. I laughed and handed Chad a beer. She'll know more about her before dinner than you'll learn in your entire life. Pam is a good girl, Dad. She lost her first mother even younger than I lost mine, and her stepmother is all she's ever known. The woman is like a mama bear where she's concerned, though. I was afraid to hold her hand in front of her for a few months. Just then her parents came in. Her dad shook my hand and grinned. "You don't remember me, do you?" I had to admit I didn't. He laughed. "That's okay. I've been your guest before, about 18 years ago. Chad was 6 and Melody was 2. Even then I think he was attracted to her. I'm Jeff. Honey's ex." I shook his hand. "Then that means..." "Yep, Melody is Honey's daughter. Let me assure you in absolute terms that she's nothing like her mother. Nothing at all. She's a good girl and I won't threaten you if something goes wrong. I'll let Amber do it." Amber was an Amazon, easily 6 feet and weighing 200. I doubted seriously any of it was fat. She smiled to take the malice out of her words, but still made me know she was serious. "I own a dojo and hold a black belt in 3 different styles. Amber holds 2. She can take care of herself, but just in case, if she gets hurt, you'd best just shoot yourself." Melody and Katie had come outside and were laughing. "Mom! You've known him 3 minutes and you make a threat? You must be getting soft. I remember a time when you would have led with that. Now, come inside and meet the mother of my groom." She stopped suddenly, going red and putting her hand over her mouth. I had a feeling that she wasn't supposed to say that. Amber and Katie just stood for a minute before they both screamed and grabbed Pam in a 3-way hug/dance before Melody came out and joined in. Chad and Jeff looked at me. "What should we do?" "Retreat. Let's go hang around the grill. I've got a cooler of beer and they won't even miss us." We were in fact on to our second beer and plating the steaks before they remembered us. Still grinning, they sat down and let us serve them like the queens they were. They stayed 4 hours before they had to leave. The women were in the den looking at wedding gowns on the computer and the men had retreated again, this time to the kitchen. Jeff looked over at me. "When was the last time you saw Gail?" "It's been 15 years or better." "You and Honey?" 12. You know there isn't a snowball's chance in hell of keeping her away when she finds out." "I know. I should probably email Gail, although I have no idea if she'd want to come." "She'll come. She and Honey are still tight and I'm sure she'll tell her just as soon as she finds out." Jeff was right. Honey and Gail came to the wedding and sat in the back, tearing tissues up at an alarming rate. Even though Chad really didn't remember his mother, he was civil to her, let her into some of the photographs, and even did a mother/son dance with her. She was crying hard the whole time. I danced with Amber while Jeff danced with Katie, then Chad took them both out on the floor. When Katie came off, she was snuffling. She grabbed my hand and mouth later. I was standing there watching the couples dance when someone grabbed my hand and tugged. It was Gail. Dancing with her was kind of surreal, but she didn't say anything, just held me tightly, then let go and fled when the music stopped. I did not dance with Honey, though Jeff did. I watched Amber watching them and wondered if Honey had any idea how close to death she was. The women disappeared into a chamber to help the bride out of her dress, and I took the opportunity to sit down in a small alcove, thankful for the quiet. I was thinking about how old I was getting and smiling when the thought of grandchildren popped in my head, when a hand landed on my shoulder. It was Gail. I started to get up but she clamped on. Please, stay seated. I owe you something and I need to pay my debt. You asked me to tell you why all those years ago and I never did. I want to tell you now. May I sit? I pushed a chair opposite me out with my foot and she smiled. After she settled, she told me it was more than she expected. I started to say something but she put her hands on my lips, a surprisingly intimate gesture. She used to do it all the time when I stared ranting about something. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't talk and just listen so I can get this out. She sighed. I did it for the money. We had been broke and struggling all our lives. Suddenly I had a chance to make some real money. Honey talked me into it. She even took me into the club and had me watch while she danced. She was really good. Then Bill offered us some coke and we took it. You weren't around me much in the early days, but I was a real party girl and the coke was nothing new to me. The stuff he had was almost pure and it wasn't long before I disconnected with reality. I came to my senses in bed with Bill. And honey. He'd had sex with both of us. I screamed and ran out of the room. Honey got me into an empty room, calmed me down, and helped me shower. She had douches so we both used them. I remember her words. They're now all squeaky clean. Mac will never know. And you didn't. I thought you'd take one look at me and scream whore. When you didn't, I started to relax. A few days later he offered us more. I took it after he promised he wouldn't touch me. I woke up at 4 in the morning in bed with two guys I had never seen. I quit cocaine and never took it again. Bill kind of laughed and told me my cut was $100. I never took the money. Bill kind of disappeared for a while and Honey and I stayed on the property. She did teach me a few stripper moves and I was always a good dancer. Then the washing machine broke down and Honey told me I could make enough in one night to buy a new one. I hated the thought of going to the laundromat so I decided to try it. I figured I would be embarrassed and horrible, but all I felt was a rush, especially when they started throwing money on the stage. Honey collected it for me and I had $180. People back then worked hard all week and didn't clear $180. Then Honey told me the real money was in mixing with the crowd and talked me into putting on a G-string and working the crowd. I had my ass pinched, my titties mauled, and one guy got a finger in my honey pot on the pretense of sticking a 20 in my underwear. I got another $140 from that. I was high on adrenaline and a few shots of whiskey when we got back to the motel and Bill said we owed him for covering for us. Honey and I worked out a rotation. I'd take Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of one week, she'd take Tuesday and Thursday, and then we'd switch the next week. I didn't fool around with anyone but Bill during that time, and he got me twice a week. She sighed and took a drink before she continued. I didn't screw anybody else until my car broke down. I needed $800 pretty quickly. I just finished my set when this drunk guy offered me $200 to fuck my ass. I hesitated for about a minute before grabbing his hand and dragging him across the parking lot. Honey had lube and she helped get me ready, but it still hurt like hell. My John thought I got into it the way I wriggled and squealed, but the wriggling was trying to get him out and the squeals were from the pain. He gave me a $50 tip. Then Honey helped me clean up and I did another set and took another guy back for some love. After that, it was off to the races. Bill called me into his office and told me from now on the Johns had to pay $15 to use the room. I didn't want it to come out of my earnings so I made the Johns pay. It just kept going downhill until we got arrested. We never did find out how they knew about us. Bill paid the cops off and gave us to them every once in a while, for a piece of ass so everybody was happy. She stopped, overcome, but grabbed my hand when I tried to stand up. I need to tell you that in my warped frame of mind at the time I convinced myself I was doing it for us, so we could have a better life. I even set a goal. 60,000 and I was going to quit, find AL. It'll job somewhere and tell you I was making a lot more than I actually was and bleed it back into our accounts. When we got caught, that never happened. Gail stood up. That's it. I fell victim to greed and stupidity and it cost me everything. It took me years to accept it, but I've moved on. I'm a successful businessperson now. She handed me a card. Give this to Chad. Tell him I thank him for the invitation, but he has enough family for now. Tell him if he has kids to send me pictures. She stopped at the door. Oh, and tell him to never go there. You either. He can get me from a phone call or an email. If I can give him what he wants, I will. You too, for that matter. Goodbye, Mac. I doubt seriously we'll ever see each other again, so live well. Love on your wife and daughter and protect them as well as you can. She grinned as she passed through the door. Yes, I named my business after you. Consider it an honorarium. Then she was gone. I looked at the card. Max. A Gentleman's Club of Excellence. Her number was written on the back. I was still there when Katie found me. Come on, she said, tugging on my hand, let's go home and recover. I grinned as Melody came up to us. I wouldn't get too comfortable. We'll have to do it all over again in a few years, and this one will be a lot harder on you. We'll deal with it.